Welcome to Bat Therapy, mental health through the lens of comics and film. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We're your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources.
Special edition episode. Wolverine, Deadpool. I'm excited.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited.
Okay. Maybe I literally told Keaton before we started recording, I don't know where to start. So maybe we start with, this wasn't what we were going to record today. We were going to record a different episode. And then I don't remember what I was doing, but I was going into the weekend. Maybe I was looking at my calendar and I was like, all right, we're going to Deadpool. And I was like, wait, is Keaton going to Deadpool? Why aren't we recording about Deadpool? So then I was like, hey, are you going to Deadpool? And he was like, yes.
Yep.
So then it was obvious what we had to do.
Absolutely it was. Well, because the thing is, it's like, I still think it fits the theme of no capes. Like,
I mean, I didn't see any capes. Did you?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing, and first things first, y'all, there's going to be spoilers in here. If you have not seen the movie yet, actually go see it. It was really good. I enjoyed it. Don't take your kids to see it.
No. Unless they're adult kids. Then take them, because that'd be fun.
Yeah. I mean, I'm an adult kid, so yeah, that works. But like, it's hard R for sure. Just like the other Deadpool movies are. I mean, I feel like we cover plenty of movies and shows these days where it's like, hey, this one isn't for kids. Like, I hope there's no kids out there watching The Boys. But
I was about to say, I think The Boys is worse.
At the same time, I've definitely heard middle schoolers like, I love The Boys. And I'm like, you do? Okay.
Yeah, that hits weird.
Let's talk photosynthesis. Like, it's
Let's talk photosynthesis and not a guy with a giant dick that slings it around and hits people with it.
Yep. Exactly.
Although, middle school, yeah. I mean, it
tracks.
It tracks.
it tracks. Like, some of the stuff in The Boys does feel like it was written by a middle schooler. I've said that before. But Deadpool Wolverine, I love the dialogue is everything. The jokes, like it's so, and they're multi-tiered, multi-level jokes, and I love how they meshed him with the multiverse. And like I said, I really feel like it still fits it kind of fits the no capes theme just because of the motives, right?
Yeah, I totally think that no capes fits. I mean, I guess technically Wolverine is wearing his uniform under his clothes
finally,
instead of
and it's not
taking it off, but
black leather.
Yeah, but there's a lot about their lives outside of being a superhero. I mean, Wolverine, his whole thing that he's dealing with is the fact that he kept choosing not to be a superhero, and just wanted to be on his own. And he's having to deal with not only himself, but the world around him and what everyone thinks of him. And then you've got Deadpool, who's essentially trying to save his non-superhero life and trying to keep everything in existence, but also trying to figure out, it's interesting because there's so much of his value and self-worth that he's putting into being a superhero. And he's told by Happy, like, that's actually not how this works. It's not how heroism works. And it's not how happiness and self-fulfillment works. So yeah, I think the no capes works, not just very literally, like they don't wear capes, but you do get a lot of them as, I mean, I always think of him as Deadpool,
Yeah.
And I always think of, you don't think Logan, you think Wolverine, so I guess they're always got the cape on in some way. But yeah, I think there was tons of stuff about them as who they were underneath.
And the thing, because of the setting of this movie, it's a lot of people that have lost their purpose, right?
Yeah.
In the void, I guess that they're I think that's what the void that they're
Yeah.
in, you know,
Mm-hmm.
all of these characters that we've seen, that we've loved, now they're in this place where they don't have much of a purpose anymore. Like,
That's a really great point, because to the point where what motivates them to help is not escape. It's
mhm,
having a true ending,
yeah,
because their lives are so abruptly plucked to the point where they're not even sure if their lives before remember them, if they were even there, because of just how all this weirdness works.
yeah. I mean,
Oh,
yeah,
Marvel universe.
because yeah, even when they were talking, when Blade at one point, he's like, "Yeah, I got yanked and ended up here. I didn't even have a chance to fight for my universe. Like, I didn't even have a." And it's so, I feel like, and that is something that I think every person experiences, and it's such a painful feeling not being in control of your own life
Mm,
and your own surroundings. Like, there's some things that are just completely out of our control, whether it's a family member being sick, whether it's wrongfully losing a job. There are certain things that are completely out of our control, and it makes you feel so helpless when it happens. You know, if you have a relationship abruptly end and you had
mm-hmm.
no idea it was coming and you thought everything was fine, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that can just hit you and shake you to your core that it just comes out of left field. And that's what it made me think about with all of these characters that were in this void, because it's like you see Pyro. Last time we saw him, he was fighting the fight under Magneto. You know, we saw Juggernaut in there, we saw
Mm-hmm.
Toad in there, we saw Elektra in there, uh Gambit,
Gambit,
who
so
never
great.
really knew where he was supposed to be. You know, but I really, that was the theme of this. I felt like it was purpose. Because even when we
Mm-hmm.
see Deadpool in the beginning, he's talking to Happy because I want to be an Avenger
Yep.
because because
Yeah.
instead of him saying, I want to help people, he's saying, I need this to feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things. And I love the way that Happy said it. It's like they don't do it because they want to. They do it because people need them.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
and
here's the really interesting thing that they continued with Deadpool from the other movies, in my opinion, is you've got this really off the wall character that lives in all of these extremes in life that very few of us have experience with. So he's a merc, he goes to the merc bar, he's I think they called her a stripper in this movie, but I'm pretty sure she was a sex worker in the first movie. Um
yes.
and just all of these different places and spaces that we think of as taboo, or
Hmm.
are in the shadows. It was all that, and then also just very real. Seeing his relationship in the first movie as it blossomed, and then dealing with cancer, and then there are just all these things that he's the most human out of all of the superpowered people, even though his life is the most extreme and off the wall and unpredictable.
Right.
And I think they continued that here. So you think, oh dear, okay, Deadpool, Wade Wilson, he's bouncing around time now. He's gonna be all over the place, making a mess of things. Well, no, he makes it so everyone he cares about is still alive. No one's coming to tell him he ruined the time space continuum or whatever, because it's Deadpool. So I guess that's what he was meant to do all along.
Right.
and and yet you think, oh, that solves everything. And that's one of the big fallacies we tend to have about happiness, and like you were talking about purpose, feeling fulfilled. We oversimplify it, and we tend to guess wrong about what's going to get us there. And so it wasn't as easy as, hey, my girl, she never got shot. And so here he is, he has all of these people that he even as he's struggling, he really cares about them and they're his world and um it's everything to him and yet it's not quite enough because there's something he needs within himself. And he keeps looking on the outside for it and it's just not working. And once again, it's Deadpool and he's doing things very Deadpool-y all along and yet it's so real in a way that I don't know if we can connect to with many other characters.
Yeah, and the thing is, what's interesting about Wade is he's pretty selfish. He
Huh.
is. Like he's pretty selfish, whether it was wanting to keep the other Deadpool's dog or
Oh god,
completely
yeah.
getting the other Deadpool killed or
And
like
Wolverine's just like, he's so just killing this guy. Okay.
yeah,
To get
or
his dog.
snitching on Johnny Storm to get him
Oh
murdered.
god.
Like it's just it's one of those things. He's definitely pretty selfish. I mean, he even lies to Wolverine. His was it educated wish?
Yes, educated with, I love it. And
Like,
so I'm it, I agree with that statement. He was hoping it was true. There was reason to believe that it could be true, but he does tend to Um, sorry, I was thinking of an inside joke with so any psychologist listening in, he's definitely elevated on scale 4. So there's so there's certain assessments that look at people's personalities, and there's a certain part of our personalities that can lean toward being okay with lying and manipulating and bending the rules and getting away with things.
mhm,
And so it's the fourth scale on one of the assessments out there. Um, and so he definitely is someone who um, doesn't mind doing those things. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is sometimes you lie and manipulate and you do all these things. And like you
mhm,
said, he's pretty darn selfish.
yeah,
He'll also, though, lie and manipulate and do all those things for the greater good. And
right,
that's why Happy doesn't boot him on his ass from the get go. I mean, Happy can tell there's good stuff about this guy.
yeah,
It's just that he's he's very immature in the beginning when he's coming there about his heroism
right,
and what it's meant to be. And when it comes to the Avengers, that's a place, well, I was gonna say that's a place where you need to have it already figured out, but I'm like, well, Tony Stark was kind of,
Psh,
he got
right,
in.
right. Like
So
I can't believe that they're interviewing people. Like really, like
well, not, I love how they make Happy do it, and then he's like, so we you're you're saying
right,
we the
like
Avengers.
I'm
We're
I'm sorry.
happy.
I'm sorry. If the Hulk gets to be in the Avengers,
I mean, the Hulk, Tony Stark. I mean, if you're making an argument for being selfish and doing heroism for maybe not the most mature of reasons,
right, right.
Tony Stark kind of fits that bill. He just happened to be one of the first.
I know I've mentioned it several times, but there was that 5 year hiatus that Hawkeye took. And
What are you talking about? Hawkeye didn't do anything wrong.
nothing, nothing
Huh.
at all. Yep, he's still just 100% Avenger. Never even had the interview, right? But
The-
it's really funny
yeah.
because I always think back on the Avengers initiative that
Mm,
uh Nick Fury had in mind, right? I want to know who was supposed to be on the team because he said Tony Stark couldn't
yeah.
do it. Thor only
Yeah.
showed up because Loki showed up. He brought
True.
on Bruce Banner because of the gamma radiation that he wanted him to track,
Mm,
right? And so, like, looking at the Avengers, I feel like the only two people that he had on
hmm.
the initiative were Black Widow and Hawkeye
But he
because,
talked about it being an initiative that brought in superheroes, so clearly they weren't supposed to be the
right,
only ones.
right.
That is an excellent.
Like who was on the Avengers? Because Doctor Strange didn't join because Nick Fury asked him to. Like none of
Want to talk about someone else who's so self-centered there?
right. And so yeah, I want to
Interesting.
know. Like
That's an
that's why
excellent question.
when Deadpool's interviewing, I'm like, who
Was it
else had the
literally just Captain America? That's
right?
all he had.
Who else had the interview? Because I mean, Tony Stark pulled Peter out of school to commit war crimes. Like
No, poor
so
Peter. Yeah.
Winter Soldier, he definitely wasn't on the
No.
Avengers Initiative. Captain America, they happened to find him by mistake, so
And they
he
didn't know Black
wasn't
Panther existed yet.
right. And so I'm like, who was on? What was this
It was
initiative that he was
literally
trying to
it
put
was
together?
literally Black Widow, Hawkeye, and Captain America.
Well, but not even Cap. He found Cap
No?
by accident.
But I thought the initiative. Yeah, okay, so you're saying that he came up with the initiative before they
Yeah,
found Cap?
yeah. They found
Oh.
him. They found him by mistake, and so like I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think.
Hmm.
So I think Deadpool was always deserving of an interview, right?
I'm rethinking this a little bit. And so, okay, I mean, once again, under no capes, underneath the mask, all this stuff. So here's the thing. They're all humans. Well, okay. I guess that's not true. They're all imperfect beings. Even the literal gods among us, even Thor is not perfect.
No,
And I mean, yeah, so Thor is just uh, arguably not the most competent. He's kind of the hammer that you aim, but you got to aim him a little bit.
well, yeah,
Um,
and that's how they wrote him.
right.
And even when they made him more than that, they were like, nope, let's just edit undo
Let's
all
take it
of
back.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But so yeah, I'm being won over that I don't know. Deadpool, like maybe I on the one hand I get why the Avengers of that time frame, although sometimes I got confused about what timing they were at which point. Um but not the young Avengers when they first got started.
Yeah.
I mean, I see why they wouldn't want Deadpool. And
Right.
at the same time, you've got Tony. And you've got all these characters
Right.
that have a lot of issues. You got the Hulk. Like you said, great point. You literally want this guy to let his anger issues take control of him
Right.
so that he can become the Hulk to help you out. So you literally want a guy to lose control to help. So yeah, it is interesting. And if you're going to argue about what are the motivations, it's a fair question. But is it that simple?
Yeah.
And can you truly say that everyone else's motivations are entirely pure? Because I think Thor, his motivations a lot of times are based more on like love of a woman than of helping a world, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Tony Stark, he loves testing his mind and seeing how far he can take things.
And
And
his
that's
whole
probably part
arc,
of it for him.
yeah, Tony's whole arc too was learning to care about something besides himself.
Yes,
The
exactly.
whole snap, like that whole thing, that whole MCU
Yes.
story with Tony in it
Yep.
was him learning to care about something other than himself on a larger and larger and larger scale to the point where
Yep.
yeah, and so
It's tricky to say when is someone at a point that they've grown enough that okay, now they can be put into this role of
right,
let's say there's intense responsibility there. So when have you reached that point? But it definitely is interesting if you think about it really closely. You're like, is that as good of a reason as it sounds?
right, yeah.
Maybe not.
I mean, all the superheroes, like all of them,
Aside from Captain, who I mean, the only reason he's purely motivated is everyone he cares about's dead.
yeah. And then
And then when
even
he
at the
gets a
end,
chance, he
he
pieces
goes
out.
back. He
He
pieces
pulls a
out
Dark Knight Rises
and
and says,
goes
"See
back.
ya."
Yeah, he pieces out and goes back to segregation days.
Oh.
We
He
don't
says,
talk.
he says, "Here you go, my black friend. You can be Captain America now, and I'm
You
gonna
be
go back
Captain
to a time."
America. I'm gonna go back in time to when you couldn't use my water fountain.
Oh, I didn't even think about that part. And he didn't even go back and change it.
He didn't go back and change anything.
He
He didn't
could have
change a
he
single
could have been
thing.
like, "I'm gonna hand this to you. Don't you worry. In a few minutes, things are just instantly gonna be better."
Right.
He
Right.
didn't fix it. Oh
Right.
God. I didn't even think of that. Oh.
It's really bad.
Oh
And so
no.
that's the thing, because I always think, because they didn't know what they were doing with their time travel rules, but when he just dips
No.
and goes back, I'm like, so is he just letting himself sit on ice in that time period? His other self? Like there's so many.
There's a lot that doesn't work because they also talk about how it's not like Back to the Future, and then ended it with him essentially being able to do it like back to yeah, yeah, things don't
Yeah,
hold up.
yeah,
But, whatever. Time travel, it's not going to hold up in some
yeah.
fashion.
But
I've watched enough Star Trek to know that you gotta allow a little artistic.
but it is fun putting Wade into these superhero situations and
Yes.
wondering how he would have handled them.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, he would have been able to snap because of his regenerative abilities. There's just no telling what he would have done with,
Well, and
with that power.
didn't he talk about that at some what am I remembering? Isn't there something that said an alternate reality was that he snapped?
Deadpool,
He
I'm not sure about that. I'm
Where did
excited
I
to.
come across this?
I'm not
Oh,
sure,
that's
but
gonna
I'm
bug
excited to
me
find it.
now. I saw something somewhere that spoofed that, and I cannot remember where it was. But I mean, yeah, that's an excellent point. I mean, his regenerative, which I cannot say apparently, regenerative powers, absolutely. Um, he also he thinks in such a way that it would also just it would play interesting with all the characters coming together. So
Yes.
Thanos, would
Oh my
Thanos be
god.
able to predict this guy?
You would hate him so much.
He'd
Like I
hate him
feel
so
like
much.
so many people would not be able to stand
Yeah,
him, which is
you know.
that's just how
And
he
then
is.
Wolverine.
Yeah, that's just how he is. And they, oh man,
So
they're
let's
the
okay.
perfect odd couple.
Yeah. So let's talk about Deadpool and Wolverine, who I'm convinced at least 50% of why they work so well together is Wolverine can just like literally kill him over and over again and it
Yep.
not matter because essentially taking out all of his aggression on Deadpool and neither
Yeah.
it doesn't bother Deadpool
Yep.
one bit.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's a very interesting thing where usually that sort of thing is going to lead to a very explosive situation that is not going to work.
Yeah.
And yet yeah, you throw in two guys who can't die and then you add those powers in and then something magical happens.
Yeah. And the thing is, and Wade is essentially just dragging a Wolverine who's more or less just given up
Yep. Talk
along
about loss of purpose.
with them, and just over the course of the movie, Wolverine eventually gets locked in to
Yep.
fight for something different than what he already lost. And I always love a villain who can mess with their mind, because it makes
Oh yeah.
them it
Oh, and dude,
it
what a
makes them deal with their
one
trauma. It
oh
forces them
yeah, makes
to.
them deal with their trauma. Oh man, and what an interesting visual way they did
I
that.
hated it.
Really? I
I hated
loved
it.
it.
I hated it because it looked so painful. That's what I mean. Like it was. I liked how it did it, but I was just like, oh, I hate this.
It's like a visualization of what therapy's
Yeah.
trying to do.
Yes.
You're right. It forced them to face their trauma. And actually one of the interesting things about it was you see Wade being essentially she's trying to convince him so we're I forget her name. What was
Nova.
Xavier's sister's name again? Do you remember?
Nova. Cassandra Nova. Is that it?
Cassandra. Yeah, why is everybody Cassandra even in Marvel?
I think
Um
it was Cassandra Nova.
I think you're right. Yeah. And so she's essentially digging in his brain and then she tries to convince him that his ex essentially didn't believe in him and thought he was a failure and da da da. And he was like, "Well, hold on, she doesn't think that." And so it was actually a really great representation of we really don't want to. We don't want to look at all those ugly things that are going on and replaying inside of us. But if you do, then you can catch the things that don't make sense
Right.
and be like, well, hold on, that part's not true. Now, sometimes it's hard to be able to step back enough to be able
Mhm.
to look at it from enough
Right.
distance where you can say, well, hold on.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was really cool to see how she was I mean, she was trying to take him out, and in some ways she actually helped him win
Yeah.
by morphing his brain, which is
Yep.
really and it's Deadpool. He's used to his brain getting all screwy.
Yeah, and because it all just kind of snaps. It all just kind of snaps back. I also one of the things that was very different about this is Deadpool's not with his home base,
Yeah.
his normal group of friends that he can always count on, that's always there with him. They're not really much of a part of this movie. They're not in there helping him. Peter pops in here and there, which is
Mm-hmm.
funny. But besides that, he's with a completely new set of people,
That's
and
true. Yeah.
he's outside of his element. But I feel like one of Wade's superpowers is dealing with any element he's placed in.
It's
Like,
true. He'll
it's
bounce
just,
around the
yeah,
same same amount no matter where you
same
put him.
amount, no matter where you put him, no matter
That is
what timeline.
that is a really good point that you didn't have the same characters balancing him out. And honestly, I think a part of me did miss that a little bit. And I wonder if it was some of what led to. So for me, I think they skirted the line of almost doing too much fourth wall. There was
There
so
was a lot. It was
much.
a lot.
There was so much commentary where it was like breaking the fourth wall or commenting on different things. And I enjoyed it, but it got very close to overdoing it.
Right.
And I wonder if part of it might have been like not having his home base. It He's relying on those different pieces, and I mean, I guess technically the writers were relying on that a little bit more, but just thinking of it in terms of his character, it also makes sense that he'd be relying on some of that stuff a little bit more because he's not in his comfort zone with his comfort people.
Right.
But yeah, I did miss them, but at the same time, there were a lot of just fun random people in there that was
Yes.
really enjoyable.
And one thing that's interesting too that I noticed is how unique Wade is, because
Hmm.
one of the things you get to see is literally dozens of other Deadpools, and
Yeah,
they're all so different than him as far as how they act, like
yeah.
how they act, how they do things. They're just a group of mercenaries, and I don't hear them cracking jokes or any of the off the wall
Mm.
stuff that our Wade does. But it was really interesting to me because I'm looking at all these other Deadpools. It's like you see, which I love that his wife was in there
So I didn't
as,
catch her. I had to look that one up, but I did catch Matthew McConaughey's voice in that cowboy one.
yeah. Did you the one that was just like a skeleton head? That was
Mm.
Nathan Fillion.
What?
Yes.
Oh, I should have gotten that. I'm usually really good at voices.
Yep, that was
I
Nathan
I did
Fillion.
not catch
And
that one.
then Kid Pool and Baby Pool
They were his kids,
were
right?
both yeah, they were his
Yeah.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so but I just like seeing all of them, and even seeing the like the nice Deadpool as well.
Oh, okay.
Like
Yeah.
they're so vastly different from our
Yeah.
Wade, and it makes me, I'm like, okay, I really would love to know what happened in their timelines that,
Yes.
one, made them get plucked out of their universe, but also makes them who they are. It kind of reminds me of when we talked about personality and what
Yeah. Yeah.
personality meant.
Yeah.
um
Well, and I think too that let's flip it. So we've been talking a lot about Deadpool, and then take Wolverine. He's the only Wolverine who's ever ended up there.
yes.
So yeah, in terms of personality, it's true. I mean, like we don't get too much time to see what the other Deadpools do, but yeah, you're not getting Deadpool interacting with other quirky Deadpools,
Right.
and you'd expect that to happen if they were like him.
Yes.
Um, but there's some similarity across Deadpools where people are like, oh yeah, another Deadpool, you're a dime a dozen. There's so many of you all here in the void. There's just something innate to who Deadpool is, no matter the variation, where you're very likely to end up breaking the rules and then you
Right.
end up there.
Right.
Versus Wolverine, there's only one. They're like, how in the world did this guy end up here? And so that has to be, can you imagine that? Where so this Wolverine, you're talking about loss of purpose, and you were talking about people who have things out of their control. Where he's the opposite. He can't live with the decision he made. I mean, granted, he didn't know what was going to happen, but he was trying to live with a choice he made that impacted the world so devastatingly around him. And then he lost control and then killed a bunch of people and da da da. And so he's trying to deal with all of that by unfortunately kind of continuing the whole pattern of walking away just every day from being Wolverine. And then you get plopped in this place, and everyone's talking about the fact that you're the one Wolverine that
Yeah.
ended up here. So not only did this happen in his world, but now he knows he's the quote unquote worst one. And that for me, I think his growth in the movie and just him being able to he gets thrown into a lot of stuff and he doesn't want it. But what was it? I'm not the right guy, and it's like, you were never the right guy until you were.
Until you
And
were. Yeah.
yeah, so it's this
Which,
whole
yeah, I love
ch-
they
ch-
brought her back too.
yes. What's her name again? X-23 or
Hmm.
and so I love that piece for him because he has this whole time he's been perpetuating just I'm choosing not to participate in life, and then finally it's flagged for him that, hey, you're never going to look like the right guy until you just you do something anyway, even though you don't feel like you're the right one for the job. And
Yes.
I loved his whole story arc.
Yes. I absolutely loved his character because the thing is, again, I really do feel like he's blaming himself for something that really was outside of his control. Because
Yeah.
I'm sitting here looking at this situation, I'm like, okay, if I guess the military came or whoever it was that came and took out all of the X-Men, all of them,
Yeah.
including Xavier.
I
Like,
know. It
if
had to be something.
right, I'm like, well, if this happened, I don't know if Wolverine would have been able to stop them. Like, Wolverine is
Fair
powerful,
point.
he's strong, but like,
Yep.
this is something,
Unless in his world Xavier is not as powerful as he
right,
normally is. I
right.
totally agree with you.
But at the same time, Wolverine, as we know it, he's not like the person that thinks up all these wild plans. How many times did he, completely made of metal, run at Magneto, knowing exactly what Magneto's powers were? Like
Mhm.
he did it at least twice every movie. He's like, I'm gonna mess this guy up. He does the
Mhm.
thing, and then it's like, oh my god, my bones! How did I forget this again? Like he, like every single time that happens, and so I completely understand blaming yourself because it's something that we all do. We all look at situations and wonder, hey, things be different if I had called them that night? Would things be different if I had turned left instead of turning right? Would things be different if I had texted instead of called? Like, there's
Mhm.
all of these situations where all we get stuck on what ifs
Yep.
instead of moving forward. And that is where Wolverine and Deadpool differ. Deadpool's always moving forward. In fact, to the point that he never slows down.
Yep.
He's
Which creates its own issues,
right.
you
He
know?
never slows down. He
Mhm.
doesn't have he doesn't have a plan. Like, he never slows down versus Wolverine in this movie, who is completely stuck in the past. And it's
Yep.
different because normally the Wolverine that we've seen, the reasons he's stuck in the past is because he can't remember it.
True. Yeah, 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 yeah.
This one,
Versus for
however,
him, that's all he can think about.
that's all he can think
Yep.
about. It's very different. And so I really feel for him because, like I said, I think it's something that all of us struggle with,
Oh,
is looking at
well,
the past and constantly
whew,
just wondering what we could have done differently. And it uses up so much time, it uses up so much energy trying to figure out what we could have done differently instead of trying to move forward.
yeah. Well, and I would say, maybe not everyone, because there's these continuums for anything,
Right.
where there are people that do something a lot more, people that do it a lot less, and then usually the most helpful way is somewhere in the middle. Um, But absolutely, it's a very common thing where I mean, it makes sense. So, wondering what would have been, it's actually a very adaptive thing if it's utilized in moderation in the right ways. And so even they actually looked at how happy people were when they won Olympic medals.
Hmm.
And I can't remember if they looked at other sports things where people were winning medals, but essentially um gold, silver, bronze, and then fourth. And they looked at how happy people were. And so of course, you get gold, you're happy.
Hmm.
You're less happy getting silver than you are getting bronze.
Because you realize you were that much closer to being first.
Because you were either, yeah, what could have happened where maybe you could have gotten first versus if you got third, you're probably more focused on, look at what I did to be able to actually get here. I almost didn't.
Right. Yeah.
And so, absolutely, regret and thinking what could have been and all these things, it's something our brains naturally do. But yeah, you can really get stuck,
Yeah.
especially when there's traumatic things going on or these really terrible situations that happen. And I do agree with you that if you really think about what was so awful about that situation, very little of it was in Wolverine's control.
Right.
And also, he wasn't choosing, hey, do I stay and help them fight, or do I leave and let them all die? Like, that's not the choice he was making. He was making the choice of like, no, I just don't want to be here. And I think he went out on a
Well,
bender or something.
and
But his it, our brains have trouble being logical when something hurts that intensely.
and the thing I thought about too is Wolverine has always been more of a loner
Yeah.
than the team guy. And
I mean, he
I
walks away all the time. It's
all
just
the
it doesn't
time.
always end that way. It
Right,
usually
all the
doesn't.
time. And the thing is, but I feel like there's nothing really wrong with that, though. Like that, I
Mm,
feel like that's just how he
yeah.
is. Like, yeah, that particular night he left to just go on a bender or something. But how? I mean, we all know people that are like, "Hey, let's go to this party," and it's like, actually, I'm an 8:30 bedtime kind of person, and they just did. And
Yep.
we wish they were there with us, but we still love them regardless.
Exactly.
That's just how they
And
are.
and I don't know about that universe, but in all the universes we've been able to see when it comes to Wolverine, that's what makes it work so well. And actually, I think there's less different there. I think, which I think you're alluding to as well. There's actually less different about this Wolverine
Yeah,
and how the X-Men and him interact with each other, rather than the real difference being what other people did to the X-Men and what happened largely in that society, and then how Wolverine responded. Because
it
yeah,
was
he's
more of
always
his
the loner.
response. Right, it was more
Yes.
of his response and
And these
how.
other Wolverines, you're right, they were also loners.
Yeah,
The X-Men found there was this like almost cute way of, I don't know, it's I love seeing just like, okay, here's the grumpy loner over here, and they're finding the way to relate and connect, and yeah, it's complicated and it
yeah,
looks kind of weird, and just like you said, the person that pieces out and you wish they were there, but
right.
you don't force them to change. That seems to be the thing, and that was still seemingly true in this world.
Yeah.
It's just that then Wolverine had to deal with everyone dying.
Mhm.
And how does he react to that?
Yeah.
Now, are there other universes where they died like that and he reacted differently? I guess that we don't know, but
Yeah. And one of the other interesting things is whenever Cassandra Nova is interacting with them and making them relive those thoughts,
mm,
a lot of the times they know that it's not real what they're seeing,
yeah,
but it's also something that they've already thought about, right? And so
yeah,
having it manifest your having your deepest fears manifest from another source besides yourself,
mm,
it does so much more damage. Like, for example, I know I'm an overthinker. I know I
Mm.
can overthink some things. But what makes it worse is when someone else next to me thinks up every single thing that I was worried about. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh no, that's
If
not,
two of us think it, it must be true.
it has, there's a 100% chance that it's true. I'm sorry, but that's it. We're locked in now. That's it. Right. And so it had to be bad. It's like, because even I think because I think at one point Wade's like, she never said that. And it's like, yeah, but she might have thought it. And it's like, oh my God, I thought
So
that she
here's
thought that.
here's the thing though, is that I think it could have helped them separate a bit and be able to step back from it,
Yeah.
because here's the main difference is, okay, this random person, or maybe it's someone I know, they're coming up with these same worries. Oh no, it's definitely true, which, I mean, we know
Yeah.
that it's more complex, what's true or not true, but
It's a
that's
multiverse.
for
It's
another
fine.
day for us to talk about. But for them, this is someone who's literally trying to break them down
Right.
and harm them.
Yeah.
So this is not someone neutral. It's not someone benevolent. It's not someone trying to help them or just someone randomly commenting. This is someone who's targeting them specifically and trying to get under their skin. And so if they are able to manage the turmoil that can come with what she's trying to trigger, if they don't get pulled in by that riptide too much, if they're able to ride the waves, they can see that, which they do in the movie.
Right.
They can see that, they identify it, and it can actually help them step away from things that don't make sense and aren't true,
Mm-hmm.
because they're realizing, wait. This person's actually not selling me reality. They're
Right.
trying to skew things. So
Yes.
so I think in some ways it helps them correct, but it's specific, the thing that might make it different than the scenario you're talking about is they know, hey, this is a villain here.
Yeah.
She's really trying to mess up my brain.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is, in some ways, it can be easier to
Oh
deal
yeah,
with knowing that someone's trying to manipulate you.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, besides the
Yeah.
alternative,
I
right?
mean, aside from, gaslighting where someone's trying to manipulate you and
Yes.
then they're like toying with your sense of reality, that's a different story. But something like this where she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm trying to mess with you," and just like going at you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times that I've worked with people who are really really struggling, and then something hits the fan, and it could be like we lost power
Hmm.
for a week here in Austin a few winters back because Texas.
Hmm.
um or a friend has something happen to them, or this, like when something happens,
Right.
it can actually be easier because you have something to target versus if it's just your internal fight. um it's yeah, it's hard. It's hard to target yourself as concretely with that. So yeah, even with this, she rides that line because she's messing with the internal mind, but there's still that outward villain that you can aim for. And I totally agree with you that can make things easier.
Yeah. And the thing, and I do love that, like, at the end of all this, Wolverine kind of comes to the conclusion where it's like, okay, I couldn't save my world, I couldn't save my universe,
Yeah.
but I can at least help save this one and be a hero to this one. I can do some good, even if it costs me my own life, which it doesn't. They make it through. They don't really explain why or how they made it through, but they did play the Goo Goo Dolls, and that was nice.
Oh my god, the soundtrack totally done by a
It
millennial.
was so good.
You knew it from the first song
It was
of,
so
oh,
good. Oh my
millennial did
gosh.
this.
Yes, the when it opened, the very first riff of Bye Bye Bye,
Yes.
I knew it, like, from the very
I
first
know, me too.
note. I knew it. I was like, "Oh
I
man, here we
know.
go."
And you just go, "Are they?"
Are they? Yes,
And then
they
you
are.
and then you hear more and you're like, "Yeah."
What a great opening. It was such a good opening.
It was
It
so
was
good.
so good.
Okay. Let's wrap up with some favorites.
Okay.
The opening was stellar. Bye 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 was such a great song to
Yes.
use as he's literally tearing Logan apart and using him
Yes.
to kill people.
Yes.
um Cavalrine,
Oh my god.
Henry Cavill as Wolverine was one of
Oh
my
my god.
favorites.
Yes. Henry
That was
Cavill
so good.
Wolverine was amazing. I also really laughed at comic book accurate Wolverine, the really short one.
Oh
Because yeah,
yeah.
in comics, I think Wolverine in comics is like 5'2". Like he's not.
Did really? He's
Yeah,
that I knew he was shorter, but
he's pretty. Yeah, he's pretty short. Even in the in the comics, he's pretty short. I can't remember for sure, but I thought it was like something like 5'2", like something like that.
that means he's shorter than me. Wow.
Yeah, something like yeah. I think so. I'll look
Although,
it up.
I mean, look, there are some people that can take you out who are short.
Oh yeah,
They're trained to do so, and I am not. But I wish I could do that. It's awesome. So
he's 5'3". He's 5'3" in the
5 to, okay,
comics.
he's my height then.
Yeah, he's
All right.
5'3". Yeah, and so I enjoyed that. There are a lot of Easter eggs in there because the
Oh,
one
so many.
of Wolverine with one hand, that was Age of Apocalypse. That was
Ah,
Age of Apocalypse Wolverine, and then the one where he's like being crucified on a giant letter X with
yeah.
skulls. That is directly from a comic book cover.
Oh,
It's directly from a comic book cover. A lot of the Deadpool variants that they showed exist in comics, and so yeah, one of my favorite parts. I definitely love Wolverine and Deadpool fighting against all the other Deadpools. That was
oh
just
yeah. It's funny because as they were finishing, I was like, I kind of assumed they have the healing power, and then I forget someone's laughing or something, and they just like all pop up again. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, what did
yeah.
you think was gonna happen? Except the
Um,
one that was
the
pretty.
one,
It was
nice
pretty
pool.
funny.
Yeah,
Nice pull. Was yeah. And
yeah,
then it was funny, but like you feel bad thinking it's funny, but like
yeah.
him just like using him to as a
So
shield as
bad.
because he loves that dog so
He loves it
much.
so much. That was really funny. I also I loved um the first Wolverine Deadpool fight. The one in the
Mm,
Honda Odyssey though, hysterical.
so funny. So funny.
Hysterical.
That one was really funny.
Seeing Blade again, I lost it. I
Dude, I did too. I did not expect to see Blade.
Yeah,
Elektra, okay, I avoid spoilers. I don't want to,
yeah,
with these movies. I'm like, just let me see. So I didn't know Elektra was going to be there, but I was like, yeah, okay, it makes sense. They're pulling TV shows and
right.
movies together, but Blade took me totally by
Yeah.
surprise.
Blade just my jaw was on the floor. It was also funny because when Chris Evans first showed up when we were in the theater, everyone was like,
Yep.
"Oh my god!" I literally leaned over to Colleen and I said, "Do you think it's?" I was like, "Do you think it's Captain America or is it Johnny Storm?" And Colleen's like,
I did not even
"Oh my
think
god!"
about Johnny
I
Storm. And when
immediately
you
thought
said Flame
about it.
On, I died.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, he's gonna say it, Avengers, and I was like, I bet it would be funny if it was Johnny Storm because they didn't show his costume, and
Yep.
you didn't. I was like, man, it would be because it was right after they showed because they brought back like Sabretooth and
Yep.
Toad and Pyro. Like they brought all of
Yeah.
them back. And so immediately I saw Chris Evans and I'm like, they have the potential to do something really funny here. And sure enough, they did.
Oh, I'm glad they did because I did not think of it because that movie was so long ago. The
Yeah,
Fantastic Four stuff was so long ago.
yeah,
But it would have been such a missed opportunity if
yeah.
they hadn't done that. I'm so glad. And then so the person sitting next to me in the movie theater, so the scene at the end where he plays it back and Johnny Storm had literally said all of the things that
Oh my
Deadpool
god.
quoted that you thought he was lying about. The person next to me was just cackling and they were like, "Ha, Chris Evans, he's not Captain America anymore so he can do whatever he wants now."
I just love Deadpool's reaction to it. It's like, and you can quote me on that. And he's like, okay. And so yeah, that was a great scene. But yeah, it was I was in stitches throughout that entire movie.
Yeah.
It was absolutely great. The fourth wall breaks, Peter Pool, like all of it was just
Peter Ball. Yeah.
it was a lot of fun. And so yeah, if hope I would like to say if you haven't seen it yet, but if you listen to this episode, I'm really hoping that means you've already seen it.
If you haven't, whoops. Hopefully you're someone who
Right.
likes, reading the wiki article
I'm
before or
I'm
whatever.
not gonna say whoops because we warned them ahead of time. This was their choice.
That's true. Yeah, a poor choice, but yours to make.
Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JVS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/battherapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.